your reaction to this jobs report?
Very good, Maria. The household employment was actually up almost 500,000. The unemployment rate fell. The work week was stable. It looks really good right now. Certainly better than consensus expectations. Better than a lot of other data might suggest. The PMIs, for example, the purchasing manager surveys suggest there should be weakening employment. So at least for March, things look good. Even if we look at the private sector, job growth over 200,000. If I take out healthcare, still looking at private ex-healthcare of around 150. It's a good number, no question.
Well, it's a good number, but is it too good for rate cuts, Bob Dahl? I mean, yesterday we heard from Neil Kashkari saying, I'm penciling in 2 cuts, but there's a chance there's no cut at all. If the economy's on fire like this and we got 303,000 jobs in the month of March, why cut interest rates?
Because the economy is stronger than expected. Inflation recently is not coming down. You're absolutely right. The probability of cuts continues to be pushed out in time and reduced in amount.
It's the first Friday of the month, which means Maria Bartiromo's bad news is America's good news, as yet another blockbuster jobs report puts on full display the extent to which Democrats and Joe Biden are succeeding on the economic front. I've seen hostage videos where the person talking to the camera was happier to be there than Maria Bartiromo. And not for nothing, but you know we're in a hot economy when the argument that Maria Bartiromo tries to make here is that the economy is actually too good. How can you cut rates with this many jobs added, with this much sustained employment? Tell you what, if the worst thing that Maria could point to is that the economy is altogether too strong, I think we're in a pretty good spot. And of course, it wouldn't be a Fox broadcast without these guys figuring out a way to give Trump credit for Biden's big accomplishment. Here they are claiming that actually, the reason the economy is so good is because the country is anticipating a Trump win.
Trump is in the lead, I think, in 4 of the 5 key battleground states. I just wonder how much.
Yeah, 6 out of 7.
6 out of 7. I just wonder if maybe the market is pricing in a little bit, and employers too, the idea that maybe we're going to get a new president in November.
We'll see. Does that work into your looking at markets, the idea that we could see policy changes next year? What do you think, Bob Dahl?
Yeah, it has to. The policy differentials between these two guys is pretty significant.
Isn't that convenient? Even when Trump isn't president, still he gets credit for anything good. Tell you what, it might be chilly in New York where Fox is broadcasting, but I'm glad that these Fox hosts are all safe in the protective warmth of Donald Trump's colon. And by the way, if it feels like this is a recurring theme on Fox, that's because it is. Here's just a small sampling of other recent moments where Maria Bartiromo and other Fox hosts are forced to report on Biden's winning economy through gritted teeth.
This is the kind of report that will likely trigger Joe Biden to take a victory lap. Even though we know that inflation is eating into people's savings, but you don't see that in this number.
Oh, from a political perspective, I would imagine we'll see the president in front of microphones this morning, obviously touting this number. But I'll share a stat with you here, Maria, and it really is incredible. The jobs count has now beaten estimates 14 of the last 17 months. So we thought we were going to get a number here. It ends up being here. In this case, in the month of May, we're talking about 140,000 more jobs added than was expected. It is amazing how the estimates, people keep getting the estimate wrong.
Well, listen, this is good news for American families, isn't it, Alfredo? Headline here, this is a blockbuster report. This is much higher than anybody was expecting. 528,000 jobs created in the month of July is more than double the expectations, which called for job growth of 250,000. All areas of the economy actually saw job growth, including leisure, hospitality, the services industry, the industrial industry. That's all good news. You've got to look at this report as a big positive. We've got more jobs created than expected. Joe LeBourne, you've been saying this for a long time, saying that the economy is a lot stronger than anybody understands. Your reaction?
It takes a while. Everything Steve said makes complete sense. The numbers are good numbers, no question. The fact that the unemployment rate fell is good. It was because household employment was up over 700,000.
And of course, all of this is continued good news for anyone who actually is rooting for the country as opposed to the GOP, which is rooting for bad news that they can leverage to their political benefit. Because something America first. And to that point of rooting for the country, there's a lot to root about. Unemployment dropped to 3.8%, marking 26 straight months with sub 4% unemployment, the longest streak in half a century. Just this month, we added another 303,000 jobs, bringing the total to over 15 million jobs, the most a U.S. president has ever added in one term, and we've still got the better part of a year to go. And we're outpacing the rest of our peers in the G7 with the strongest growth in every country. Meanwhile, inflation is still flat while wages continue to rise. I don't know how many other ways I can say this. Democratic policies work, Bidenomics works. Don't take my word for it. All you have to do is look at the numbers. But let's zoom out a little bit, because while Biden deserves a ton of credit, he is by no means the only Democratic president to have presided over a strong economy. Of the 51 million jobs created since 1989, 96% have been created under Democratic presidents. 96%. That is 49 million jobs added by Democrats and 1.9 million added by Republicans. Biden alone has added 7 times as many jobs as the last 3 Republican presidents combined. Not great for a political party that's branded itself the Jobs, Jobs, Jobs party. As for the unemployment rate, consider this. George H.W. Bush left office with 7.3% unemployment. Clinton brought it down to 4.2% unemployment. Then George W. Bush brought it back up to 7.8% unemployment when he left office. Obama brought it back down to 4.7% when he left office. Starting to notice a trend? Trump left office with 6.3%, and Biden brought it back down to 3.8%. So again, in my entire lifetime, Republicans have exclusively allowed the unemployment rate to rise under their watch. In fact, during Trump's term, all of those fiscally responsible Republicans voted unanimously to add $7.8 trillion to the debt to give themselves a tax cut. A quarter of all the U.S. debt was accrued under Donald Trump alone. So this idea that Republicans are fiscally responsible might be nice branding for them, but it is undermined by every single factual metric that exists. And by the way, that's a point that Gavin Newsom brought up in our most recent interview.
You look at, by the way, just on the jobs score, I think it's so important for Democrats out there to understand this. Since the end of the Cold War, since Reagan left office, there have been 50 million American jobs created. 48 million of them, I'll repeat that, 48 out of 50 million American jobs have been created under Democratic administrations, not Republican administrations. The last 3 Republican presidents have one thing in common: recessions. The last 3. I can't believe we've been debating the issue of jobs and the economy in comparing to contrast the Republican Party. So, look, again, all of this is, it expresses itself in terms of the work we have to do to lift up the work that Biden and Harris and the Democratic Party have broadly done. We got to show up for this guy. He's shown up for us last 3 years, the American people, the most significant economic plan. I said it on the stage. I'll say it again to you. Since FDR, the CHIPS and Science Act, the infrastructure bill, the most significant investments in infrastructure since Eisenhower. $1.2 trillion, 550 billion new investments. I mean, we're seeing the benefits of that. California, we just announced this morning, the $6 billion coming into my state, and the tens of thousands of jobs being created just on our first in the nation high-speed rail program because of that infrastructure investment. I mean, he's doing things Republicans dreamt of. I mean, Donald Trump, every week, the punchline, you talked about it ad nauseum. We all have that punchline that was infrastructure week. The lowest Black unemployment in American history, the lowest unemployment for women in 70 years, the lowest Hispanic unemployment in American history, the lowest poverty rates for African Americans in American history, the highest insured rates. I mean, across the board, if any one of those things, remember, you hear Trump all the time talking about the lowest Black unemployment under me. He lost, by the way, 2.9 million jobs. That was Trump's, and close to $9 trillion of debt. I mean, and the fact that they're selling that as somehow was a renaissance and in prosperity in the United States, Biden's actually delivered, but we need to deliver that message. And if it's not someone else, then I just said, okay, if I'm not going to see other people do this, I appreciate Pete's been doing great. A lot of people do an amazing job. Like, they're out there for this guy, for Team Biden. But I think we need to get more of us. We need reinforcement with pride. We're not pulling teeth here. We've got the record. I mean, they don't. They have rhetoric. They say, well, we're going to lower interest rates. Really? How are you going to do that? Inflation's out of control. Well, what are you going to do about it? They got nothing.
So look, if you're wondering why we just endured 15 months of an absolutely baseless push to impeach Joe Biden, Now you know why. It's not because he did anything wrong. I mean, hell, even they failed to conjure up a single piece of legitimate evidence to actually impeach him for. It is because they needed a distraction from Biden's strong economy. What Biden did with our economy is what they always promised to do while constantly falling short. Again, there has not been a single Republican administration in my lifetime that's turned in a better economic or jobs performance than a Democratic administration. And Republicans clearly know that, which is why it's going to be nonstop impeachment and Hunter Biden and gas stoves and migrant caravans from now until the election. But take these desperate distraction attempts as a compliment, because they wouldn't have to resort to these tactics if the Democrats weren't overperforming to an extraordinary degree. It's also why Republicans are desperate to convince Americans that the economy is weak. In fact, according to the Wall Street Journal, look how many people think that their own finances are fine, but that the broader economy is bad. Respondents in all of these swing states claim that their finances are strong, but that the nation as a whole is somehow a mess. That is by design. It's the result of a right-wing media machine convincing people that our economy is weak because conservative media refuses to report the truth. And so even though individuals can see the reality about their own finances, and so right-wing media can't manipulate them about that, still they're under the impression that the rest of the US, everybody else, is a disaster. That is what disinformation looks like in real time. Even Donald Trump himself admitted that he wants the economy to crater.
We have an economy that's so fragile, and the only reason it's running now is it's running off the fumes of what we did. When there's a crash, I hope it's going to be during this next 12 months, because I don't want to be Herbert Hoover.
That's the guy running to preside over the US, hoping out loud that our economy crashes so that it'll hurt Joe Biden politically. Donald Trump doesn't care about you, he cares about Trump. So look, I get that Republicans want these numbers to crater. I get that they want nothing more than to have some evidence to point to in order to perpetuate this misnomer that Republicans are responsible stewards of the economy. But the truth, based on the actual numbers, is that that couldn't be farther from reality. The only thing that is virtually guaranteed from Republicans, going back more than 3 decades, is that there will be fewer jobs added, if any, sky-high deficits, and an economic recession. And that'll be followed by a Democrat cleaning up their messes, just like what happened after Bush 1, Bush 2, and Donald Trump. So while I understand that they are desperate to see cratering GDP and high inflation and low wages and big job losses, the fact is that they're going to have to wait until a Republican takes office before any of those things will happen. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.